So, hey everybody, welcome to the fifth and final module of our Social Work with Groups course for the semester. Um, in this module, we're going to be appropriately talking about how we end things with our groups and some of the different dimensions of that. Before I get started, though, I just wanted to again remind people to do their best to get their challenges done as soon as possible with respect to the 5 modules that we've had since shifting over to the online format. Remember that the challenges are going to replace other kinds of things that would have happened had we been able to meet face to face, like the process recording assignment and that kind of thing. So to be sure, the challenges are really important for being able to give you a grade. As I mentioned before, I will create for this class a challenge, a giant challenge. If doing the individual challenges for each of the modules is too cumbersome and you'd rather do everything all at once, then certainly the end of semester challenge will be available, and I'll be putting a study guide into the Canvas site for the course in the course resources module. So if you're planning on doing the end of semester challenge, then feel free to let me know that. Remember that it's one or the other. So if I see that you've chosen to do the end of semester challenge, I'll disregard. I'm not going to calculate grades for the individual module challenges. So the end of semester challenge will replace all of those. So just be mindful that it's a one or the other kind of situation here. So back to ending groups. So in lots of ways, when we're talking about ending groups, we're talking about certainly ending them as an entity at the very end of our time with our clients. But there's also some processes related to ending that we want to be mindful of with each meeting that we have with our clients. So 2 levels of ending. One is certainly looking at endings when they occur at the end of one meeting with our clients, and then again at the very end of our work with them together. In this module, we'll look at both, but certainly I think the bulk of the emphasis is placed on the kinds of things that we want to do when it's time for our group to end as a whole. So there are a couple of factors that I think are important to keep in mind with respect to the ending of a group. And remember, ending is that 5th phase of forming, storming, norming, performing. Adjournment or ending is really where we are now. And some of those things that are important to keep in mind are, is your group an open group or is it a closed group? Remember that when we're talking about open groups, we're talking about members that are coming and going pretty much all the time the group is meeting. So it's one of those kinds of things where the people in the group, your group members, will experience endings, if you will, whenever a group member, for instance, stops coming or decides to do something else instead of coming to the group. So it's very different in some respects than a closed group, where again people start, the group starts with all the same people and typically is going to end with all of the same people. So endings look a little bit different between the closed model and the open model. I think it's also really important to think about how close has your group gotten during the time that they've been together. So looking at that issue of cohesion, if you've got a super cohesive group, then clearly, whether it's an open group or a closed group, it's very likely that when the group ends, people will have to come apart. And as a result of that, there can be certainly some facilitating, some processing that you're going to need to do to help your members move through that. Whether the group, again, is closed or open, it is likely that members will be lost from time to time. So, again, things can happen. People get changes in jobs, changes in their schedules, changes in their financial situation. Those kinds of things have an impact on groups, as do things like group facilitators leaving groups because they've been reassigned in their organization, or they find another job, or something else happens. Keep in mind that next year, when you're in your internships, you will be, at the end of the semester, leaving the agency. And so if you're actively involved with groups as part of your internship, you'll want to be preparing your group members for your departure well in advance of your final meeting. So there's some basic kinds of processes that are involved whenever we bring a group to a close, and certainly those kinds of things, by far and large, in treatment groups, are going to be helping people to maintain and generalize the kind of changes that they've been able to create in their own lives. So some of the terms that we use to describe that are things like transfer of training or compliance in the long run, meaning that we want to set our clients up before the group ends to be able to take what they've learned in the group and apply it to their life, not only just a couple of times, but as kind of a lifelong change kind of thing. So part of what we're doing toward the end of our time together with our groups is ensuring that our clients are able to take what they've learned from the group and bring it into their own lives in a meaningful way. The other thing that we end up doing, which is kind of odd, is this idea of reducing group attraction, meaning that all that time that we spend early on as facilitators trying to get people to talk with one another, not talk through the leader, provide mutual aid to one another, and those kinds of things to create cohesion in the group. Now we're going to try to do that in a reverse sort of way, gently, to sort of help members decrease their dependence on one another in the group as well. Certainly, as a part of that, reducing attraction to one another, we're going to be assisting our group members with addressing the feelings that they might have about ending. And certainly, one of the first places to start with respect to addressing feelings about ending is with yourself. So it's important for you to have some idea about how well do you manage endings in relationships. If it's a hard thing for you to do, it's probably something for you to think about working on, maybe even getting your own therapist to do that with you. Because if you have trouble with saying goodbye, if you have trouble with parting company or ending relationships when it's time, then it's quite possible that you'll have some difficulty when it comes to helping your group members. Another thing that kind of goes along with the idea of sort of transferring the training from what people have learned in group to the outside world is really looking at the next steps for people. So what kinds of things lie ahead for people? It's possible that even at the end of your time together with your group, some people in the group are going to have some needs that were, beyond what the group could address or beyond what the group could address within the time frame that you were meeting. And so it's very important that when people leave group, if they've got those needs, that they have some strategy, some kind of a blueprint, if you will, for figuring out how they're going to address those kinds of needs. As part of addressing those needs, we might need to make some referrals for clients. So I would encourage you to become really familiar with that referral process. I know we've talked about it at other times in the course, and specifically it's talked about in this chapter, and so I think it's important to have a look at that in terms of really what are the steps and at what levels as a social worker are we going to be involved in that referral process. Are we going to be brokers? Are we going to be enablers? Are we going to be advocates? What are the kinds of things we might need to do for our clients? And we have to be willing to do those to make sure that our client's okay after that group is over. Certainly in the last module, we looked at the idea of evaluation, and certainly as part of the ending of a group, evaluation should take place. So I think for the most part, the idea here is to conduct maybe a pre-test kind of measure before your group gets started, and at the end of the group, take a look at seeing where people are with respect to giving them that same measure again as a post-test. I think it's very important that that we conduct evaluation of our practice, and to be sure when it comes to knowing whether or not the kinds of strategies that we used were successful with our group members. Oftentimes it's that evaluation at the end that lets us know whether or not our clients got what they needed to from coming to the group, and whether or not the next time we do the group, we might need to maybe come at it from a different angle. When it comes to ending with a group, it's really important that almost from the time that you're thinking about putting the group together, you're really thinking about what will it look like on the other end when you're bringing things to a close. So it's very important to sort of have a plan in mind before you begin the ending phase with your group, and to also ensure that your group has plenty of time to move through the ending phase. So it's not like bringing it up the week before your last meeting. You want to bring it up, weeks in advance of the final meeting of the group. So begin addressing tasks with the group as early as possible, and again, create some kind of a plan that you can follow with respect to the kinds of things that you'll want to do during the ending phase. I think as a last sort of word on this, and this is addressed in the slides, and I think to some extent it may be addressed in the text as well, but it's perfectly okay to have ending celebrations. We'd like to have them, when people leave our, task groups, or people leave our work settings and that kind of thing. We have, cake or food or, some kind of celebration. Some groups even have graduations. Those kinds of things are all fine to do after we've done our work in terms of the ending processes. It's never an acceptable thing to use only the party or the graduation or whatever as the way for people to part company. So always important to make sure that the ending process is a planful kind of thing, and that you're facilitating it from beginning to end. Okay. That's it for now. I've certainly enjoyed being with you guys this semester. I really am sorry that we didn't have a chance to do some of the more experiential parts of the course. In the second half, which has unfortunately been mostly online, is when we typically practice some skills. We would have used Thursdays to do those things, and unfortunately we haven't had the opportunity to do that. Still, I think that there is a lot more to do with respect to group work, and hopefully you'll be able to experience some of that in your internships next year. As always, if there's anything that you're concerned about, or you have questions about the course or the way forward or anything like that, please feel free to reach out. You can email me. And again, we can Zoom, we can do all kinds of things to stay connected. And I hope we'll be done with all of this soon, and back in person by the time fall gets here. All right, thanks very much. We'll see you soon.